Okay, hi, my name is Shelby Darby.
I'm Jessie Dunn.
I'm Kayleen Hostetter.
I'm Linda Kornberg.
Tammy Carson.
Amelia Harrington.
And we also are trying to get Morgan Stafford, is that her name? Last name? In with us. She's gonna call in instead of being in the video chat. Okay, so this week we watched Dr. Will's The Political Argument Today, and we're gonna talk about our individual issues. Let's go in the order that we introduced ourselves. Some of us, I would assume, have like redundant issues, so I'll start. Does that sound good with everybody? Cool. Okay.
Quick question.
Yes.
Who's doing the summary?
Oh, summary. Who hasn't done it yet?
Did we decide on that last week?
I think Linda was talking about it. Who?
We decided last week.
Was it Morgan?
I think it was Morgan.
God, Morgan, we need you. Okay.
I can take notes.
Okay. Thank you for volunteering as tribute. Alrighty. So my issue that I chose was Social Security, particularly because I got super hyped when he was talking about it, because at first I thought he was being really offensive to old people and saying that they shouldn't have Social Security. And I was like, whoa, this is bold to say at BYU, Idaho, or BYU Provo. But no, that wasn't what he was saying. Anyway, why did the government get involved with this issue? So let me pull up my notes here. On Wikipedia, the source of all truth and light, it says that Social Security is any government system that provides monetary assistance to people with an inadequate or no income. So Social Security is basically a way to help people who are poor or don't have income. Some of the people listed on Wikipedia were people who've lost a spouse, people who are old, people who are unemployed or have disability. So Social Security was created for those people amongst, not to disclude others. However, it says here that it was created like after the Great Depression. That was when the emergency relief was needed. And so I think that was kind of like a catalyst to meeting this need. The next question was, has it been effective? I think that is a very to each their own question. Some people would say it's effective. Some people would say that it's like a drain on our society. Even Dr. Will kind of said that. So it's not that like helping these people is bad. That's not what I'm trying to say. But there needs to be a means to like pay and help support these people. That's better. So what he suggests, what have been the results? Yeah, lots of people benefit from Social Security. My parents are pretty up there in age, and they're about to withdraw some of their Social Security, and they've done it before. So that's just like a personal relation there. Anyway, so based on George Will's speech, what could the government be doing right now to help? He suggested that people work until they're 74. One of his main concerns was that when Social Security was created in our country, people weren't expected to live so long. And so, I mean, where now people are living like 30 to 40 years beyond what they were living at that time, the government is having to fund their livelihood for 30 to 40 years rather than like 10 to 15. And so that's a substantial leap and a huge financial commitment. I thought it was interesting how he talked about we were planning on borrowing money for like future generations, but now they're just borrowing from future generations. I thought that was a very like powerful comment there. Dr. Will cites a problem no one wants to talk about, with Bronfenberger's model. Can somebody help me understand what we're supposed to be talking about with this specific question? You're all on mute.
The one thing that he said that no one wanted to talk about was education.
I think we're talking about that all as a group afterwards, right?
Okay.
We're all going to talk about our different things that we chose to research on.
Okay, so I'll just
That's
stop there.
what she's talking about now. It's her research.
I would actually interpret it the same way. Oh, well, no, because the bottom question talks about what I researched too. So it's just kind of like thrown in there in the middle.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
How is the industry impacting children, families, communities, and our nation? That's kind of, so education, Linda, is what you're talking about?
The answer to that question, right, the statement right above it, he says that cites a problem no one wants to talk about was education specifically. Was when he, in his talk, he said that. So I don't know why it's stuck in there in the middle of all that.
All right, let's address that as a group then at the end. Now that thank you, Linda, for pointing that out, because I guess I missed it. So we'll address the bottom part too as a group.
All
so
right.
I'm done with Social Security. Jessie, do you want to go next?
So I picked welfare, but then as I was like looking to it, I was like, this is so broad of a topic to say welfare. But anyways, that's what I did. And so why did the government get involved in this issue? Well, it started after the Great Depression in the 1930s because there was a need for it. The government were worried. They were concerned for the welfare of families, and they were hoping that it would stabilize the economy. And they were especially worried about the children's welfare in these families. And so has it been effective? The number of dependents on government welfare has increased gradually each year. Sometimes it's gone up and down, but it's gone on a up and down gradual rise, according to all the different statistics and studies I was looking at. And Medicare is where we've seen the biggest jump of government funding now, because it's been more enforced as of recent. And so that's where a majority of government funding is with the welfare. And let's see, what have been the results? Like you said, I found actually a lot of different mixed opinions, as well as research going back and forth saying it's been a good thing, but it's also been a bad thing. I found actually more negative than positive about it with research. And the negative was more focused about the children, actually. They're saying one study specifically said prolonged welfare dependence reduces children's IQ levels, and dependence also reduces child's earnings in future years. The longer child remains on the specific one they were talking about was AFDC in childhood, the lower will be their earnings as an adult. Being raised on welfare increases the probability that a child will drop out of school and will be on welfare as an adult. So I know there's a ton of different welfare programs out there, and they've gotten a lot better on putting like end dates on them and requirements, but they still are showing more negative majority than positive. And as an opinion, we're like what was said before, I need to talk. We're kind of creating a dependent society. And let's see, based on George Will's speech, what could the government be doing right now to help the situation more effectively? I don't remember him specifically saying how he would solve the welfare program. The only thing, like actually what you were saying was, I wrote down the retirement age moved to 75, but that falls under Social Security, what he was speaking about specifically. And that they actually, I mean, most people that plan on not being on welfare and running out of Social Security are kind of adjusting their retirement age. Like my dad plans on working until he drops, but that's not everyone. So let's see. What else? The Brenner's model. How is this issue impacting children and families and communities on our nation? I put down it's affecting children at the microsystem level, which is at the very center, which affects that house income, poor male behavior in school. Oh, he mentioned this. The poor male behavior in school and in the community is when we see that, specifically said 1/3 American children are born out of wedlock. That was his one problem they wanted to talk about. And also that affected the whole system because it affects the home. Then most of the males end up having issues with in society and in school and later on in life. Not to dog on the males, but they're just statistically higher than females. Let's see, according to one thing you can do for the country. I think that's it. Right? Okay, I'm done.
Morgan had something to say.
Hi. So, something that I was interested in terms of welfare for those who are disabled, and I found a lot of similar things. Is that Jesse talking before?
Yes.
Yes, I found a lot of similar things to what Jesse found. And I think the thing that was most interesting to me was that, like, prior to World War II, they had discussed creating welfare for those who were disabled, but it wasn't really necessary because the public had stepped up and they were taking care of people, whether it was like through charitable organizations or family members just donating to help those in their family who were disabled. And then after World War II, then they implemented programs for the disabled because it seemed like maybe that funding might not be as readily available. But just listening to George Will talk in his forum at BYU, I was thinking, and this is kind of, I was thinking even before that, but just what he was saying kind of reaffirmed that it would just be better if people help to take care of those people again, because it's the right thing to do and not through government funding as much, because it just creates a bigger problem for the future. Like he mentioned, it's just, and even the apostles, like in the reading that we talked about, I think it was D. Todd Christofferson, he was like that we should be doing the right thing because it's the right thing and not be reliant upon the government to do the right thing for us. And I don't know, I think we're capable of taking care of those people without welfare or without as much welfare. I just don't think we do it. So yeah, that's my 2 cents for right now.
And then just as Jesse and Morgan, I too did welfare. So I'll just stay unmuted for a second. Pretty much found the same things. One thing I did find was specifically about the TANF program, Temporary Assistance for Needy Families. And that program was implemented in like 1996 by President Clinton to try to reform traditional welfare. And they found that there's a lot less people using that program than people who had been on welfare previously. Like the numbers are going down. However, the amount of people who actually, like the people who are actually receiving the healthcare are generally not the population who are in poverty. Like the people who are in like severe poverty aren't receiving this assistance. They're receiving other forms of governmental aid, but not specifically this program that was created to benefit their population. So as Jesse was saying, like welfare is such a wide topic and there's so many different programs available. I saw a statistic where there are more Americans enrolled in the food stamps program than there are in some of the other welfare programs. And so one thing I thought was interesting with Dr. Will's talk with regards to the question of how could we, address this situation, he said that the creative ideas all come at like the personal level. Like they're never at the governmental levels. They're always like just an individual came up with an idea. So my thought with that was we should like go to our communities, go to go to these populations and see what we can do that they would think would be most effective for their families, rather than the government deciding, okay, well, we think this would work best, and in reality, it's not working. So those were my thoughts.
That's interesting. I like the idea of like personal intervention, like people who can actually go in and intervene rather than like a one size fits all for everybody, because not every family is in the same situation. Some people need help with finding work. Some people need help with getting medical care so they can work. Really cool. Linda, are you ready to go?
Yes. One comment on the welfare system. I think if the government adopted the LDS welfare program, it would solve all the problems in that area, because they would teach people how to work, not just how to get food for the day. That saying, teach a man to fish. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Okay.
If they modeled it after the church, they would be having centers like the DI that could teach people how to work and not just get a payout from the government. And I think that would make a huge impact on the services that they're receiving, because they'll have an investment in those. Anyway, that's just my opinion on welfare. I picked No Child Left. Go ahead.
Morgan had a comment.
Sorry, I was just listening to what you were saying, like if they adopted the church welfare system, that it would be better. And in Wisconsin, when I was in high school, I did a research project, and in Wisconsin, there was a governor who was previously on welfare, and she instituted a program for people who are generally on welfare in Wisconsin. I don't know if it's still in place, but it was, where they were only allowed to be on welfare for a certain amount of time, and during that time, they had to go through job training and all this stuff, and then there was job placement, and it was found to be fairly effective. So, yeah. Anyway.
Cool.
Because I think the government right now, it's just that people apply and they get the payout. I don't think there's a lot of requirements for them to improve their situation or the programs to help them improve their situation. So they're just giving them a fish every day instead of teaching them how to fish.
There actually are a lot of requirements set in the different programs. That's actually what I was reading about. I don't want to bring it off topic too much.
30 seconds.
Okay. They started bringing a lot more requirements in the different welfare programs. But as especially being on a mission, and a lot of people that I've worked with, I have met more people that have lied and worked around it to get into the welfare system and so they're meeting the requirements, but they may have somebody lying for them saying that they're paying this much for rent, or they're saying they're living with someone, or so the requirements are in place, but we have a dishonest society. And
Do they have the work program training them how to get a job and all that?
They do.
Or they get paid in cash and they don't claim it. When I lived in Vegas, I saw that all the time. And so anyway, Linda, back to you.
Okay, so the No Child Left Behind Act, and he talked a little bit about this. Just to review quickly, it was implemented 15 years ago, and this was from when this article that I just pulled up was written, by George W. Bush, and it was to close the gap between education levels of the different children in the country. And they wanted to have 90% graduation rate and be #1 in the world for math and science. Well, after a period of time, they were still 78% graduation rate and nowhere near the top. So then I think in 2014, Obama rewrote the program, and we still aren't anywhere close to what their vision is of closing the gap. What they're finding is that states are dumbing down their system, their level of proficiency, so that they can get the funding from the government, rather than raising the standard at the level of their children's education. They're dumbing it down so that they get the funding from the state government, from the federal government. It said that let's see, the law required that all schools reach 100% proficiency as measured by state tests or face punishments. This was an impossible goal. Standardized tests became the be-all and end-all of education, and states spent billions on them. And they found that even though kids take tests better by writing, that most states were going to the internet or the computer to do it, spending millions and millions on technology so that they could have the kids test this way, even though it wasn't the best way to test them or closing the gap at all. And just a couple of more thoughts. The federal government, states, and school districts have spent billions of dollars to phase in the standards, to prepare students to take the test and to buy the technology needed. And it said that children starting in 3rd grade might spend up to 10 hours a year taking these state tests and weeks preparing for them. So they teach them, I can't remember the terminology, but they teach them so they can take the test and pass it. So they're not really teaching them curriculum, they're teaching them the exact information they need to be able to pass the test. So obviously the No Child Left Behind Act is not working. It was funded by Bill Gates, and it was a program that was not going to be effective because it wanted all kids put into a cookie cutter mold and to have to pass the same tests no matter what level they're at by their grade. And why the United States of America is so low in numbers in the ratings of countries when it comes to our children's education is really a scary thought. And the number of kids that we have that don't even graduate from high school. Obviously, there needs to be something because this isn't effective. And George Willis in his speech, does anyone know, I don't know that he's specifically said what a solution was for this. Did you guys ever catch a solution for the education problem? He talked a lot about it, but I don't remember him saying anything specific. I think we need to give education back to the teachers, and good teachers that will be kept in place by decent salaries, but let the teachers teach our children at the level they're at. And if they're higher than their other classmates, deal with that, give them the stuff that they need. Don't try and just keep them in that little cookie cutter mold because it's doing any good for any of them. And I think across the board with the model of Ron Ben Brenner's, however you say it, that it's impacting every single level, all from micro all the way up, because the government's involved, and it starts at the family and goes all the way up to the government level, and it's not working. Yeah.
Thanks,
so
Linda.
That's my input.
You done good. All right, Tammy, are you ready?
Yep, I took the Native American issue.
Cool.
And I also kept it the same. Like, that's the one that I researched and posted about for our first discussion this week, because I felt like that would just give me another layer of depth to it. So I don't know. I feel like everybody knows the history of this, but essentially the reason the government got involved with the issue in the first place is because of a history of violence and antagonism between the settlers that came to this country and the Native Americans who were already here. And eventually, the government reached a place of seeing Native Americans as a natural resource rather than a people that were here, and meaning that, that they felt that they needed to be used for the country's good. And they moved them off of their lands, all of them off of their lands, and did it multiple times over the 100 years between kind of when they started to finalized where tribes currently are. It was over 100-year process. And so that was the motivation. The motivation to get into it was also to provide safety. There was the motivation of safety for settlers as they moved to different parts of the country. And of course, they moved to those parts of the country and wanted the resources and land that the Native Americans had. And then the Native Americans would fight back, and then it was a safety issue, and it was, oh, they're violent, so we have to do something with them. Has it been effective? No, it hasn't been effective, really. The results are that we have a great divide. And this week I spoke with a woman who's a Native American in Blanding, Utah, where there's a reservation. And one of the results is that we see there's this gap between understanding Native Americans have a unique heritage and history and right to lands because they were here before we were, and that as Americans, we all should just say we're all American, even to a Native American. You're American. There was, what happened was my friend who's an advocate because she grew up there and she has an understanding of it, she contacted her group down there, and who is a mixture of white people and Native Americans. And it was really interesting. I only saw parts of the discussion, but just this, what I think the result of all of it is that has created animosity between white people and Native Americans. And we feel like they're given everything, and they feel like their traditions and cultures are not honored. And all of the effort that the United States has made to make that up to them has only created a greater divide between all of us. And essentially, Native Americans do not have equal rights to the rest of American citizens, but they have American citizenship right and Native American right, and so that creates antagonism. And I think looking at Bonfinbrenner's ecological framework, I think the biggest problem is the macro system level. It's the attitudes and ideologies of our culture that have compounded over time, and that it's a trickle-down effect that it affects everything. It affects the ecosystem, right, with how media portrays it, local politics. Every area of the country that has Native Americans has different issues and problems. It has affected the social services that we provide to them, and it trickles down to the microsystem level that, I grew up where there were reservations, and then the main place we raised our kids, there were reservations. And so I think it's a super complex issue that we made complex by how we've dealt with it. And I absolutely saw nothing in his speech that directly had any suggestions for it, other than the overall feeling that government can't regulate morality. Government can't regulate good moral code, and it can't, I'm trying to find, I wrote it down. The only way government can make us better is by holding us accountable to common virtues. And the more we get into these issues, the more we're looking at the overall problem is that virtue is on the decline in a lot of ways. So I didn't see any useful or helpful solutions for this. If anybody has any thoughts, I don't know. I mean, I know.
I just have a quick question. Did you, when you were doing the research, does the government, well, I know they do, they give a monthly payment to Native Americans?
Not all Native Americans. Nope. Totally depends on the tribe, totally depends on the location or the reasoning.
Well, in South Dakota, my daughter lives in Rapid City, and there's a great population of, and I don't know what tribe they are, the African or the Native Americans, but they get a monthly paycheck. And my daughter said, to stay away from Walmart when they get their paycheck,
yeah,
because they go and spend it all, and then they wait till the next month when they get another check. I don't think that's helping them with their self-esteem or.
No, but they also can't own land. I mean, they can't own land. And that's for me, one of the things that stood out to me in reading through the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, and even in Dr. Will's talk, he talked about the fact that the main resource and capital of the United States when those documents were written was land. And a Native American person cannot own land. They can only lease it. So I don't know. See, that's the thing. I can feel really heated about that for them, but I also can feel really torn because where does the equality actually come in, right? But anyway, so it's a complex issue.
Thanks so much for sharing. I think you brought a lot of attention to a problem that personally I didn't know a lot about, and maybe some of the other women in this group didn't either. Caitlin, are you ready?
Yeah, I am doing notes and trying to think of my thoughts. Okay, so I did homelessness, which kind of goes into the welfare system, and then I built off of that as well. So basically what happened was homelessness was always a problem in the history of the United States. But like you guys said about the welfare system, the family took care of them and the community took care of them more so than the government didn't have any dealings with them until the 1980s when the home prices skyrocketed and jobs decreased. And it basically made this ginormous gap of people to lose their homes. So, it was such an issue that millions of people lost their homes. So that's when the government started to come in, and they got involved because a lot of these people would go to the emergency rooms, and it was one of the largest expenses you can go to for medical care. But they also have to see you where other places don't, and that was costing. Oh, where is that? It was like 100,000 or 10,000s of dollars. And then in order for them to get a warm bed and a safe place to stay instead of on the streets where it's cold, a lot of them would commit petty crimes to go to jail because they knew they would have food and water and a warm bed to go to, which one person for that facility would cost the government and taxpayers $20,000 per year. And so it was becoming a big issue. And then even homeless shelters can cost anywhere from $15,000 for a single occupant a year instead of the $4,500 or $5,000 for a low rental house. So they were trying to figure out how they can make a program that will help them get on their feet and also cost less money towards taxpayers. Has it been effective? No, they've put in about $2 billion worth per year into federal and state programs to help out. The problem is a lot of homeless people have mental illness, addictions, and help that they need, but we can't give it to them because they don't have a secure place to stay. And so the American Planning Association is addressing that by wanting to build them homes first and then get them the help they need for jobs and positions like that, which can help, but at the same time, they're having problems because the zoning areas where they want to put these communities, people are denying because they don't want their house values to go down. Right. So anyway, so that's basically the history on it. I have to move my screen so I can see what the other questions were. Oh, according to Bill or Dr. Will's speech, it's basically what you guys talked about with the welfare system, that the nation's becoming more independent, the increasing dependency. There's more and more people becoming homeless. And I'm a big advocate for people taking over instead of the government, because it's that individual personal needs that we need in our own communities. And that's how it was before, where the people in the community took care of them before the government stepped in. And I feel like Dr. Will talked about how when the government takes over, then the people can say, oh, well, I don't have to worry about that because we have a system or a program for that. Where we need to get out of that mindset. We need to see people as people instead of as a program. Yes. Oh, and then what, according to the model, it's definitely affecting the microsystem, considering how many single moms are out there and who have become homeless because they can't take care of their children. And there's so many children on the streets now that homeless teenage programs that we're not effectively helping them with their future by not even giving them a place or home, let alone education and the opportunity to increase in their lives. I think that's it, right?
Yeah. Great
Okay.
job. Thanks so much. So, because we're getting so close to time, what I thought we'd do with the last question is I'll just answer it, and unless you disagree, we'll call it good. Does that sound okay? Or if you have any like particular insights that are super important. Okay, so according to Dr. Will, what's one thing you can do for your country's reserve a spacious portion of your life for which your country is not responsible? Do we agree? I would say, yeah, we absolutely agree that it's good to be self-sufficient. Our prophets and apostles have taught us that being self-sufficient is important, and that relying on welfare when you don't need it is unnecessary and not good. Sorry, my son has a lot of comments on the subject too. In what areas do you personally feel that the government should be involved and should not be involved in addressing your chosen threat to children and families? I think we've all kind of answered that question as we've talked about our specific topics. Would you guys agree? Nodding is yeah. Okay, cool. So yeah, are we good? All right, Kayleen, ready for that summary? Do you need a second? Or are you good?
I think we'll be okay. Okay. So, do you want to, before we do the summary, do you want to see who wants to do stuff next week, or do you want to do that after?
We'll do that after.
Okay. All right. So, as a group, we researched Social Security, welfare, homelessness, and No Child Left Behind education, and Native American aspects. With Social Security, it was specifically geared to the unemployed, widow, and old after the Great Depression, and it depends on if the government has been effective with the program on who you talk to. Some people, especially the ones on it, say that it's great. Other people are saying it's draining the economy. As for Dr. Will's speech, he suggested that people need to start working until 74 or later instead of cutting it off early, and that it is a huge financial commitment for the nation. For the welfare, after the Great Depression, it happened after the Great Depression to stabilize the economy and the children's welfare. Numbers increase each year, and it's making citizens become more dependent. Before the community and families helped until the government took over, reform traditional welfare happened, and then various programs have taken place, making the system more complicated. Many Americans are on food stamps, which is increasing the dependency. According to Dr. Will, some of the ways that to make the situation more effectively is to take people off the dependency, because our increase is going up, and then we also need to increase the retirement age as well, and using creative ideas for the more individual matters of the situation instead of having it become a national broad perspective. For homelessness, basically the same thing. It increased in the 1980s with the prices of housing going up and the decreasing of jobs going down. $1 billion have been directed, and but it hasn't been as effective as it was before. So we need to go back to the basics of having the family and community step in to see people as people. As for the No Child Left Behind, it started 15 years ago, but had to be rewritten, and it's still not working to close the gap of education levels like it was supposed and designed to be. States are, to meet the needs, states are actually decreasing their educational requirements instead of increasing them, and we need to give the education back to the teachers. For Native Americans, the government's got involved with the history of violence between settlers and Native Americans. The government started and the people started seeing Native Americans as a natural resource instead of people, and started moving them off their lands, which, according to our homework, that the pursuit of land is one of our rights, and they are denied that. It's not effective because it's becoming a greater divide between people, and still there's a ton of animosity towards each other, and the gap of understanding histories is getting wider. In relation to the Bronfenbrenner's model, it's in the macro system where the attitudes of culture over time has caused more problems. And with Dr. Will, the government can't regulate morality and needs to give the use of land back. Okay, so then our statement with Dr. Will's statement of one thing you can do for your country is to reserve a spacious portion of your life for which your country is not responsible. We all agree with Dr. Will that we need to show self-reliance, and that has been taught in our church, and that's what we try to live, is to for the people to govern the government instead of the government governing the people. Yes. And that we need to take care of our own, basically.
Yay!
Okay.
Good job. Okay, go group. So I suggest that Morgan take the summary next week because she wasn't able to do it this week. Morgan, are you cool with that?
She's cool.
I was going to say that anyway, so.
Okay, yay! And then who would be willing to do the...
I can do the invitations. I haven't done that yet. And then okay. I'll send a Zoom invitation to our emails. We can try Zoom next week.
Sounds good. Let's do that. Do you have all the emails, or do you want me to send them to you?
Nope, I got them.
Yay, okay. Go
all
team.
Right. Thanks.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.